Anaheim Convention Center. This video, we're going to be talking about D23, formerly D23 Expo. I don't think we're going to be saying D23, the ultimate fan event, very often in this video, but we're going to talk about the Anaheim Convention Center, talk a little bit about this convention. We are doing this one for the sake of time as a live. So we know there'll be people joining us live, but we also know most people will be joining after that. So we hope you enjoy it. As in the past, if you've tuned into any of like our Comic-Con type videos and things like that, we really encourage people to use the comments to help each other. If you have tips you want to share, whether it's before the con, during the con, or whatever, please feel free to jump in there. Today, as we do the live, I'll do my best to keep an eye if there's questions in the chat there. But I do have pretty decent sized script here that I want to keep to as well to make sure that we talk all about this convention. So with that said, let's turn the camera around and start looking at where we are at here. So as we go into this, for those that maybe don't follow like all of our videos for Comic-Con and things like that, we do a lot of guides for Comic-Con. We always do a couple for D23. Because of the time of year that it falls, there's usually not as much time there to do those. But D23, we've been going since 2011, so we weren't at the very first one, but we've been going pretty much since the beginning there. And it is a complicated event. It is really like no convention that we've been to, and we'll kind of talk about that on a number of different fronts there. But if you're somebody tuning in that's like a Comic-Con fan, a WonderCon fan, and you've not been to D23 before, it's just important to start kind of leveling expectations because things are run very differently here. So as we look, let's just kind of get ourselves situated in terms of our bearings here. For those that may not be as familiar with the Anaheim area, they'll be tuning in. We have got the Toy Story lot for Disneyland right across the way there, the Clarion Hotel as well. Off to the right, off to the left, actually, the Marriott Anaheim is here. And then to the right, we have the Hilton. And of course, the convention center dead in front of us there. So the show is very different in that it's staffed by people directly from Disney. They don't hire like an outside organization to come run it. And so when we talk about San Diego Comic-Con and being like patient, it's like 10 times more needed here than it is at any other convention that we attend, because there are a lot of people that are really trying to figure it out as they go. And every year or every 2 years as the event returns, things are very different. We find there's a lot of inconsistencies about everything. So as we go through things here, you know, we'll do the best we can, but we'll also be very honest in that we ourselves get a lot of anxiety about this convention because so many things do change consistently. And there's a lot of just really unique and kind of strange things. For example, they really advocate, like if you look at their cosplay or like their dress rules, it's all about dressing as like Disney characters. Of course, Marvel, Star Wars are fine, but you know, I don't know that they'd kick you out if you dress like Batman. I don't know that anybody would want to dress as Batman at D23, but it's just there's interesting little twists like that. Or when we talk about autographing, like what they'll autograph and what they won't is also very interesting. So we'll go through some of those as we do. So we're starting out here kind of talking generally. Pack lots of patience. Make sure to understand that the show is going to be heavily reliant on card. ATMs will not be really needed, and there'll be something that the entire convention center is cashless, and the various booths in there, most all will be outside of kind of the smaller marketplace ones there. It is already sold out, so if you're watching the video looking at tickets, there are people reselling tickets, but in terms of officially, everything is sold out there. Make sure if you've not already done so to get the D23 app, because it is going to be more important than ever, and very much so. If you're a Disney fan, you know how important apps are these days, and it is definitely going to be a huge part of the D23 experience. So, all right, let's talk about kind of the check-in area and all of that there. So this is our central hub here where people are going to make their way in to check in. There will be bag check. Make sure to check all of the stipulations. For example, they say no food or drink. In our experience, we've never found them to really have issues with people bringing food or drink, but it is part of the rules of no outside food or drink. And so it's an interesting little twist once again there. They do have metal detectors, of course, there. Make sure, and they stipulate this to allow ample time for arrival. That's a quote that they've used many times in the past, and we have found it to be a very slow process getting in from times. The regular show floor hours, 9 to 7 p.m., 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. again. Now, that does not include the Honda Center, which that's part of the big differences this year, is you do have the biggest panel. So the Hall D23 that used to be part of the convention floor and kind of a adjacent to it the way it is at San Diego Comic-Con, that is gone. And so you're going to have the big Honda Center, which should be interesting. It should make for the biggest floor we've ever had, and we'll talk more about even expansions beyond that. But it also adds to kind of some of the changes there. But in terms of the after hours stuff, that is beginning from 7 o'clock on in the Honda Center. But in terms of the convention center proper, not going to be things going on there. Access for the main entrance can be different, but normally the targeting is the Hall E area. But it all is going to start here. There will be signage. We have had some really crazy times. If you listen to our past podcasts, like, we've had people get here like hours after us and get in before us because of how they queued things up. So it's a really, really challenging situation often with the access there. So again, pack your patience and we'll see. Before we get back to talking about like the floor, the panels, and signings, I want to talk real quick for those that are D23 and D23 Gold and Disney Plus subscribers. There are a number of additions this year in terms of, and really there are every year, but normally just for D23 Gold. But in terms of looking for booths throughout the floor that have the offer spot sign. So if you see them, you can view them actually on the app now and also on the D23 website, but they'll have offerings. Sometimes it'll be a pin, a lanyard, discounts, you know, it really ranges, but if you're already a member, it's something you would want to check out anyway. And as part of that, make sure that you have your D23 card on your app, whether you are a gold or general member. Make sure to have that digitally in the app there, because that's going to be very useful throughout the convention there. Now, as I said, the floor is bigger than ever. So as we're kind of centered here at the convention center, security is going to be right here, bag check, or it should be as in the past if we're going to hope it's that part's the same. And metal detectors. Off to the sides here will be the food trucks, which is one of the challenging things. If you've been to the Anaheim Convention Center with big cons, it's nice to have food trucks as extra options, but it's also very challenging because it takes up space for queuing up. And so it can get really crowded in this area during the con there. Now, we said bigger floor than ever. So part of that is because they are using the Honda Center for panels and they've removed the Hall D23. But the other part about it is they're using the north building, and we're going to make our way down that way as long as security doesn't have any issues with it. But it is this far right down here. It was an area used as a queuing area. I know we've been queued up there like underground. If you've been to Power Morphicon, it is that area. But that area is going to be used this year for the World of Disney, the Product Experience. Quite a name there. The World of Disney, the Product Experience. And so they're taking some of their biggest booths and moving them off the central floor and down to a separate building. So when you add that, the idea that they're taking those big booths and they're moving them down there, and then you're also having the expanded room of the Hall D23. It should, again, make for more room on the floor than we have ever had before. And so as we think about the floor real quick and kind of take a look at some of this, I mean, a lot of this area has much more room to move than it has in the past. And so on the far right, you've got your Disney Plus booth and Marvel Studios, Hulu, Ava Fest, which I'm guessing will be have some tie-ins to what they did at San Diego Comic-Con, mid-floor, Avatar, Lucasfilm, National Geographic, ESPN, of course, Pixar, Imagineering is always popular. We'll talk about Mickey's of Glendale and Mickey's of Glendale Pin Store as well, but these are all stores that are still on the main floor, but there's also a number of stores that have moved off that in terms of that North 200 area. And so as we talk about that, the D23 Marketplace, you do have your things like a Marvel experience, a Star Wars experience, a Pixar experience. Joffrey's Coffee is over there. And again, this is all in that North 200. And then probably the biggest spot for many is going to be the D23 Marketplace. All right, so as we look down this way, let's talk about virtual queues a little bit as we make our way to kind of the extension of the floor here. So in terms of the virtual queues for the floors, really important to know how those work. They are for 6 of the locations. And so in that you have the D23 Marketplace, Mickey's of Glendale, the Disney Studio Store Hollywood, Mickey of Glendale Pins, Walt Disney Company Store, and Walt Disney Company Pin Store. So all of those require virtual reservations most of the time, or they're part of the virtual queue, but not all of the time. So here's where it gets really kind of chaotic. So the virtual queue is needed all Friday for all 6 of those spots. So if you're coming on Friday, all 6 of them: D23 Marketplace, Walt Disney Company Store, Walt Disney Company Pin Store, Mickey's of Glendale, Mickey's of Glendale Pin Store, Disney Studio Store Hollywood. Okay, all of them virtual queue. Virtual queue is at 4 a.m. and 1 p.m. Why they moved it to 4 a.m., I will not understand. It seems like it's purposely to like ruin people's time out there, but they've moved it to 4 a.m. From what I believe it was 7 a.m. last time around. And then again at 1 p.m. So much like how FastPass would work for things, or I'm sorry, for the virtual queues like in Florida and things, you could have that second shot at it. Now on Saturday, it changes though. That day, virtual queue is needed for everything except Mickey's of Glendale. So Mickey's of Glendale, no virtual queue needed on Saturday. Then on Sunday, virtual queue is needed for everything except Mickey's of Glendale and the Disney Studio Store Hollywood. So again, Sunday, no virtual queue needed. You can just queue up normally for Mickey's of Glendale and the Disney Studio Store Hollywood. And again, those times are 4 a.m. and 1 p.m. if you're trying to get a spot. You can book a spot for yourself and one other individual if you're making your way there. So, hectic, frenetic, weird, odd, yes, all of the above in those cases. So very, very strange how some of these things are. Now, if you didn't get in those and, you know, you have other, like we found lots of the various stores opened up for availability later in the day on Saturday and a lot of Sunday. And so we got into several places that we didn't have virtual queue for later on in the experience. I'm sorry, later on in the weekend. And that is once again possible. So don't give up hope if you don't get in. It feels very sad in the mornings when you don't get that thing, but there are options. You just got to kind of keep a look on it. Also, I'm really wondering, you know, in the evenings, as so many people are moving over to the Honda Center, if that may open up things as well. So we'll see how that all works. So we're going to make our way down here. We'll look at some of the banners up here. You know, people were excited to see these on social the other day, starting with Tiana at the front. Now, a question we get a lot during this convention or leading up to is about exclusives and them releasing information for exclusives. And the short answer is it's very inconsistent, as are many things with D23. I feel like they've released more information this year about exclusives than they do in most years. So we've got a few questions about, like, will there be a comprehensive guide? And I do not think that'll be the case. A lot of times people are figuring that out on the floor. We've got anxiety here, which is like the perfect icon of D23, at least for us. I don't know about for the rest of you. A couple more things with the floor on the swag side. So if you put in for the RSP, maybe for like the Pixar ball or the pennant, and you didn't get those, just know that with that also, there are sometimes opportunities there as well if lines aren't quite as long. But also there's a lot of swag that's not part of the RSP system. There are a lot of these booths. I know we talked about it with the Disney Plus subscribers and the D23 Gold members, but there are lots of opportunities for swag separate from the RSP system. So don't give up all hope there if you didn't get that. There is a complimentary bag check, and they are also extending the hours. Previous years, and in fact, right here where we're lined up here in between A and B is one of those bag checks. The glare is really too bad to see it, but there's a Sully right there and a Miss Piggy, so you can find them. But bag check in the past has been wrapping up by like 7:30. This year, they're extending it to 11 p.m. during those days because of people going to the Honda Center where they do not want you bringing bags. So remember to check out all that information. D23 has sent it out a few times about the specifics of the Honda Center situation, the shuttles, all of those things. So, Classic Storm. All right, let's talk signings real quick because I think it's one of the areas that is really surprising for a lot of con attendees that have not been to D23 before or maybe just haven't done signings there. The signings at D23, they want you to specifically be having signed prints that they are giving as part of it or D23 exclusives that they're selling. So, you know, they're not wanting people to bring comic books from home to get signed by Jason Aaron. They're not wanting people to bring their Boba Fett helmet to get signed by Daniel Logan. They have specific items. In fact, if you go into the app and look at the requirements for signings, it'll even say that there may be a request for you to show your receipt of purchase for a D23 item in order to get it signed. So, not that people haven't had success bringing their own items to get signed here and there, but it definitely is not what the rules are. And that's a really important thing to know going into it. Now, in terms of panels, let's talk a little bit about that, because that, again, big change. And we're making our way to that North 200 building. So we'll show you that and kind of how that fits in if you're heading over to that world of product experiences, or whatever the full title there is. So we did lose Hall D23, and so that is being replaced basically with the types of panels with the Honda Center. But you do have the backlot stage and the Hyperion stage. Those are both on the second floor. There's escalators right here down by Hall A that will take you up, or down by Hall D. So either of those will work to take you up to the second floor, or you could head up to the third floor as well, where the archive stage is. Now, expanded in size this year is the premiere stage. So the premiere stage, I believe it was in room 6A. I want to say it was second floor, maybe it was third floor. I don't know, but it was a much smaller space, but it's moved over to the arena this year. So if you're not familiar with the Anaheim Convention Center, right around this corner, we have a pretty massive arena relative to like convention center side. Not a big arena compared to like, going to concerts and games and all that. But for a convention center, it's a really nice spot. Now, the challenge with the arena to know is that it really depends how they set the staging up of how many people it can fit. So it's really hard to know how useful the arena actually is in terms of it. Because it is an arena, of course, people can sit behind, in front, left, right, etc. And so we have been to shows here that use the arena and they close it off like the halfway point. And so it really only seats at most half capacity. But either way, it's still a big upgrade to be using any of the arena over where it was this same stage last time around. And also, 2022, this was used to show off, what was it, Amazon merch and the airplane and stuff, which was cool. But those are definitely things that can now fit onto the regular floor with the expansion there, and with, again, the use of the North Hall. So this is ACC North. Now, if you are in the central building where we began, you can take the escalator up, the same one we were talking about, going to the second floor for hall, for those stages on the second floor or the third floor. You can take it up and make your way right straight across and come over here. Now, that being said, might they close that off? Yes, very possible, because things are very different at D23 sometimes. So that would be a general way it works. Now, quick thing to share, like a quick little, silly story of like why, like, if it's any normal convention, this walkway will be open. You could make your way across, or you could come outside. Either works. That said, D23 is the same convention that in 2022 chose to not use their concession stands inside. And instead, they just kind of did their own internal operations of food and had, like, I don't know, 6 booths in a small circle of the floor. It was the weirdest thing ever, because Anaheim Convention Center had just refurbished a lot of their food and made their offerings a lot better. And so whenever we do these prep videos for D23, it's like, again, nothing else we do, because we just really don't know what's going to end up happening as we get to there. So we don't know also with the panels, because they do have the RSP system, we don't know how much standby will be allowed. We don't know how popular. We know something like Lorcana is going to be very popular. We could guess the Marvel ones will be very popular. But to what degree and what percentage of the floor? I mean, there's so many question marks here. Normally, it's really hard to figure out, like, well, how many people are interested in a thing? This time, it's how many people are interested in a thing and how many already have reservations for a thing, and then the people that got the reservations, are they going to go to the thing? So there's a lot of question marks there, and all we can really suggest on that is really keeping an eye on these rooms. If there's something important to you in one of these panel rooms that's accessible, like on the second or third floor or the arena, highly suggest getting there early and scoping it out. Also, we can use social media, try to crowdsource things. I know we'll be sharing things, retweeting things, reposting things on X/Twitter, and we'll share any updates that we can there. Now, in terms of the, like, getting here in the mornings and stuff, let's talk about that, because parking can be very difficult. The standard parking price for the convention center is $20. People also sometimes have their Disney passes and decide to park over at like Toy Story. Those are options as well. Just remember that parking is going to become very challenging here very fast. The Anaheim Convention Center has one of the most challenging parking situations of any convention we go to, because you add in all the busyness of just Disney. There's thousands and thousands of people that will be at Disneyland on those days that have no interest in D23 even. And so, as hardcore as those of you are that would be watching this video, or us making this video, that we would not miss D23, there's so many people that will have no clue D23 is going on, but they are going to be crowding these streets, taking up spots, and also filling in, food spots. There's going to be people staying at the hotels that aren't here for D23. And so, as we kind of think on that, some things to know as well with the surrounding area. There is a CVS straight down here. We go down this street here. There's also a Coffee Bean there. Of course, there is the Starbucks inside both the Marriott and the Hilton. They get incredibly crowded. Not that the Coffee Bean down the street here doesn't get crowded as well. But the CVS can be a good spot to grab food, especially if you're staying in the hotels here. Beware, if you've not been to Anaheim Convention Center area in a while, that they are really kind of struggle with food in the area. Now, there will be the additional food trucks, of course, which is great. But outside of that, the restaurants close a little bit earlier than they did pre-pandemic. I mean, even during Star Wars Celebration when we were here, like we walked like blocks and blocks away to grab food because just everything was closed by like 8 o'clock. And so it's been surprising. We thought, we were just here for WonderCon in March, not as big a show as D23, but still a big show. And stuff was closed early. So keep that in mind. Of course, we've got Downtown Disney over here. Whether you plan to visit Disneyland or not, Downtown Disney works. I would suggest heading over to the Disneyland app. If you're coming from out of state, you might not already have the Disneyland app. You can check out like if there's reservation availability there, and just kind of get a handle on all of the food options and all of that. So those are a few of the things that are kind of on our mind, or these are the general things that people want to know about with D23 Expo. If there's any questions here, we could take a few questions at the end. I know I've seen a lot of people in the live chat helping each other out there, and I appreciate that. I do think that all of these big time conventions, the best way to handle them is really trying to crowdsource answers and get help. And I think it's particularly important with D23 because there is just not a lot of information out there. And so it's really tough. You have to cobble things together and find a lot of resources. So on that note, also, if you find, sites that you find particularly useful, people that are doing a really good job handling social during the con and directing you to great swag or great, booth options and things like that, make sure to throw them in the comments here if you don't mind, to help others out, because we know people watch these videos all throughout the weekend trying to help each other. So all right, we will be back with lots more D23 this week. Follow along on our social feeds. You can find us at Parks and Cons everywhere. We'll have a lot of content this weekend from the convention and try and share as many tips as we can to help people have the best D23 possible. With that said, we're going to wrap up here. And until next time, we'll see you in line somewhere.